From selling the family business, which didn't go as well as they had hoped, to regrouping and doing it again. Let's learn. Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson.
I'm Scott Wood.
Welcome, Britt Fair, president of Fair Texas Title.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Welcome, Britt.
Thank you.
What's
Glad to be
going
here.
on? What's happening in your world these days?
Well, it's spring in the title insurance world, so that's when it's in theory gets bubbling up a little bit and busier, although it's not quite as busy as it was a couple years ago.
Yeah. Let's just jump in there for a second.
Yeah.
Obviously, as busy as you expected it though, or slower, or yeah.
I don't even know what to expect anymore.
How much of your business is commercial versus residential?
We are significantly skewed toward residential.
Okay.
We probably have 5% of our transactions are commercial,
Okay.
maybe even less. Maybe it's 5% on revenue.
Okay.
We're significantly residential. We would love to do more commercial.
Yeah.
It's more a function of the people that we have and the relationships that they have.
So obviously then residential's a little slower from your perspective.
Again, I just don't know what to expect anymore. It's there was what I thought of as, or I think of as the normal times of 16, 17, 18, 19. And even were those normal? I don't know, because we were already doing QE from, back the great financial crisis. So then 20 hits and we all thought we were all going out of business. And, and then somehow that was a sign that we all needed to buy houses and refinance and all that. And so it got crazy for a while. And then once everybody did all their stuff, then it got slow because everybody had done their stuff.
So how much of the business, so 95% residential, how much of that business historically has been refi versus new purchase?
We've always focused on the resale side.
Yeah.
The point is, if you focus way too much and want to be a refinance title company, that's great when there's refinances, and then when they go away, you go away. So think of those as gravy, and you try to get some temporary staffing help to deal with those refi booms. But I've always found it to be longer lasting if you are more on the resale side.
So the ebbs and flows for y'all's business specifically really is more about new, the volume of new purchases.
Correct.
It has nothing to do with refis and
we're also not real big on home building. We do some home builders, but more custom onesie twosies, not the big volume stuff.
Yep.
D.R. Horton has their own title company, but you get the picture. If somebody's building 1,000 or 2,000 homes in North Texas, that could really move the needle if you closed all of those.
Yeah.
So is this an interest rate driven phenomenon?
It is, definitely is. And most people think about their own pocketbooks, and they say, well, things have gotten expensive with the interest rates. More important part on that front is the sellers don't want to sell because they have a 3% mortgage.
Right.
Correct.
And if you sell, that's an asset, so to speak, that is going away. And, I don't know about you guys, but I have a 3% mortgage, and my lender sends me mail frequently asking me, hey, we can help you pay this off faster, because they want to get rid of that loan.
What are some guidelines that you would give to listeners who are thinking? We're always thinking about homes, and
sure.
How would you coach up how to be thoughtful about the process?
Well, and I would just add, like what you just said, like thinking about your loan as an asset.
Yeah, it's not technically an asset.
Right, but it's a very different way to look at it now.
Yeah. I think the first thing is we all need to think about homes as a place to live. Stop thinking about homes specifically as an investment. I know it is an important investment, probably the most important investment and the biggest investment people will ever make. That's the first and foremost thing, is buy a house because you want to live there, and you want to live there for a while. If it doesn't make sense to buy a house if you're, I'm not picking on any age group, but if you're 25 and you don't really like your job and you think you might be moving and you might want to take a job that's across town or across the state or across the country, it doesn't make sense to buy a house. You need to make sure that it's a place that you're going to want to be for a while, because there are upfront costs, realtors and title and mortgage fees and whatnot that take a period of time to recoup that in a flat market. And yes, price appreciation is great. And yes, there are some inflation hedge aspects of home ownership that I believe in, and some tax deductible aspects of mortgage interest if you itemize your deductions and all, so it gets all complicated. But first and foremost, you got to think about the home as a place you want to live and want to live for a while. Well, first of all, I moved around a lot as a kid, so I have seen.
Interesting.
We can go into that, but really, it's just when you read the news, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or more often, it's like when you're on Twitter or X or any of the other, Facebook, and you see the gurus talking about buying all these houses and a lot of advice out there that, some of it's good, some of it's bad. And if it's free, then you're getting what you're paid for. I just think that it comes down to something that's so fundamental of the first thing is you gotta have a place that you want to live in, and homes, yes, they're an investment, but first and foremost, it's a place to live and raise a family and enjoy those aspects.
Incredible segue. Where were you raised? And tell us about those kind of early formative years for you.
Well, so I moved around a lot as a kid because my dad was actually in the title business and was setting up title offices around DFW. Okay. So moved a lot between Dallas and Denton, actually.
Yep.
Elementary age, up through elementary school. Finally settled in the Park Cities, middle school and high school.
Okay.
So I don't know what definition of raised is, but that's where I ended up.
Yep. Love it.
So
siblings?
I grew up. It's a more complicated question. I grew up with a sister.
Remember when I told you the other day that when we prep people, a lot of, if you're listening or watching, okay, what's it like? I'm like, you already know the answer to every question we're going to ask. And if you don't, that's where the magic starts.
Yeah, there you go. That's right.
So we might have just tapped into some magic.
So I grew up with a sister, Ellen, and my parents divorced when I was late high school.
Yep.
Remarried. I gained on my mom's marriage 2 stepsisters. On my dad's side, I got 2 half-brothers.
Yep.
My mom's husband passed away. My dad got divorced. Mom married again, got 5 more step siblings. Dad married again, got 2 stepsisters. So I don't know how to answer the question anymore.
Now I know why he paused when we asked the question.
I can name them all, but the point is, I don't even know if I'm related to them anymore. Are you still related?
The fact that he can keep up with who's a half and who's a step and like all that.
And if you can name them, phenomenal. I'm not going to quiz you. I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to quiz you. But that's impressive. Are you married?
I am married.
What's her name?
To Sue.
Sue.
Been married 25 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's great.
And y'all have kiddos? We
have 3 kids. 3 kids, 2 in college, 1 in high school. And so actually about to have 3 seniors. Senior in high school, and my twins will be seniors in college. So
where did you and Sue meet? How'd y'all meet?
I like to say that I met her at a bar. She doesn't really like that part of the story because it was Chewy's over on McKinney Avenue.
Yeah, of course.
I was over on the bar side of it, but a restaurant, bar, I don't know. It was after college, and she was out with her girlfriends, and I was out with the guys, and one of my guys had recently started dating one of her girlfriends, so we met there, and she hated me at first, and I grew on her.
So what was your poor pickup line then when you first met her? Do you remember?
The thing that she reminds me of is that I told her I was from New Jersey.
Maybe not a great pickup line to a Texan.
Not
is she
Texas.
a Texan?
She's a Texan. She's a Texan. And, I don't know why I said that. I did go to school in New Jersey.
You went to school.
I know why. If you're listening or watching, is there maybe a Ivy League school in Jersey?
I think there is one, yeah.
What's it called?
It's called Princeton.
Yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
So that was his flex on Sue.
Maybe it was.
That's right.
And it maybe backfired for a little while.
I just need to make a call out, though, to the Chewy's swirl margarita back in the day.
All right, come on.
Absolutely.
What do you got over there?
It looks like water, so,
That was kind of the original, I remember their margaritas so good.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day. Now they've been replaced by another more popular swirl margarita.
I know, and I actually ate with my daughter and her husband and my other daughter at said Chewy's the other day. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit sad when the mojo sat on top of something for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And when that mojo moves,
Yeah. Oh,
it
you
was
see that in the
quiet.
restaurant business.
The bar
as much as it, yeah.
was the outdoor patio bar was empty, and it was like, man, this place used to be rocking.
It was the place.
It was the place.
Yeah. Where did Sue grow up?
I guess I would call it far north Dallas,
Okay.
Spring Valley, and Hillcrest,
Where'd
meandering.
She go to Pierce?
Now she went to Hockaday.
Okay.
She was a lifer.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
But was up in that general vicinity.
I mean, that's generally where I grew up.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Okay.
Growing up, sports, arts, music. What are you doing? What are your hobbies, passions, interests?
I was into sports. I mean, I love music, but I had zero talent in that front, and art I don't even really like. But, but I played every sport.
Who were the bands you were into in high school?
Well, so I was a little bit of I didn't quite fit in that I was really into country music because that going back to my Denton roots.
Yeah.
You know, the Merle Haggards and the old country stuff. Not like Hank Sr., but you know, the
Old
Ronnie
school.
Millsap or whatever was early 80s, kind of stuff. And so, was kind of into Alabama, I guess, at that point in time. So,
Yeah.
Maybe,
but then
maybe
I kind of,
Waylon Jennings.
yeah, Waylon and Willie, all that
there you
stuff.
go.
Yeah. But then, I also got into sort of the classic rock kind of middle school boy stuff. So the Zeppelins and the Van Halens and the whatever.
How do you get to Princeton from Dallas, Texas?
The sport that I ended up focusing on was football. And I had a teammate who was a really good football player who was also a really smart guy. Mm-hmm. And so just about every school in the country with good academics wanted him to come play there. And Edward Herring is his name. He's a great guy. And he ended up choosing Stanford, which makes sense because in addition to being a great school, it was free, whereas that's not the case at the Ivies. They don't give athletic scholarships.
It wasn't in Jersey.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, California's its own story. But anyway, so I sort of got I'm here to recruit him, but hey, here's a application. I hear you're smart and you're on the football team. So I got a couple of those types of applications, just the scraps that they were all trying to get Edward to come play for him. And so actually the funny story there is my freshman year of high school, the Final Four basketball tournament was in Dallas, Reunion Arena. And so my dad knew, he was a basketball fan. I was a basketball fan. And so he bought us tickets, and I don't know how he picked where the tickets were, but we ended up smack in the Duke section. Okay. And I didn't know much about Duke other than I heard it was a good school or whatever. And the students were right nearby, and I watched basketball, and I didn't have an opinion of Duke at the time, but I all of a sudden loved Duke.
Yeah.
And being in the student section and getting the chant when the call went against them, and they were chanting, "We beg to differ, we beg," and I just thought that was genius. So I was convinced I was going to Duke. Applied early decision, which is binding. You have to go when you get in. And so I was going to go when I got in, and got this weird phone call from the guidance counselor at Highland Park High School saying, "Can you come please see me?" The day before I was going to hear from Duke. And she said, "What'd you write in your Duke essay?" And I said, I don't really remember, And she said, "Well, can you provide me a copy?" And I was like, "I didn't keep a copy. I just watched the Cowboy game and read the question and wrote the answer and mailed it off." And she said, "Well, they're not convinced you can write a competent essay. So they're going to defer you and have you resubmit an essay and tell an 18-year-old boy, that you're not good enough. And, I'm going to either show you or I'm going to say to heck with you." And so that's probably about as clean as I can make it. But I had to scramble. I was going to Duke. I knew I was getting in. I was a genius. Thought I was anyway. Again, going back to those days, it wasn't like the Common App was online somewhere.
Yeah.
Like you had to have physical applications.
Yeah.
Was the plan to play football at Duke?
No, I wasn't really good enough. But what's interesting about that? So anyway, I had these applications from the Princeton coach, and Harvard was after Edward. So I got the Harvard application and a few other schools that I had also visited. I didn't want to go to the Northeast. And so anyway, applied, and then my dad said, "Hey, maybe we ought to go visit. Like, you applied to these schools or whatever. You'd seen Vanderbilt and you've seen North Carolina, but you hadn't seen Harvard or Princeton. We ought to go look." And so we took a trip up there in April, right as I can't remember if I'd heard that I hadn't heard from either one. Maybe that's what it was. And the trip in Boston was awful. Like it was just bad weather at that time of year. I mean, April the 1st could be nice or it could be
terrible.
It was sleeting.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful in Dallas when we left, because April the 1st in Dallas can be pretty nice.
Yep.
But then go from Boston to Princeton, New Jersey, and it was a little chilly. It was 55, but it was sunny, and 55 at that time of year, people were thinking shorts
summer.
and T-shirts,
Exactly.
and they're out throwing the Frisbee, and I'm thinking, I could do this. And I'd gotten on the list. Princeton had a sport. At the time, it was called lightweight football, and it was a varsity sport, tackle football, but it had a wrestling type component where you had to weigh in each week, and every player on the lineman, quarterback, running back, receivers.
So it's traditional football.
All had to be 160 pounds or under at weigh-in.
I've never heard of this.
I haven't either.
Well, there are only like 7 schools in the country that play it.
So what year is this?
So that was the spring of '89 when I made my decision to attend there.
Did they also have their traditional football team at that time?
They did, and they all had freshman teams at the time.
Okay.
I wasn't quite as big as my dad was, and my dad was not as big as his brother was, and so I was basically the smallest guy in the family, and so I thought, there's a possibility that I'm going to grow into playing in the heavyweight, the real football or whatever. If Ivy League football counts as real football. But, okay. But anyway, so I played on this little lightweight football team and won a national championship, if I do say so myself.
No way.
And
what position?
Corner and free safety.
No way. That's awesome.
So it was fun.
There were 7 teams.
There were 7 teams in the country: Army, Navy, Penn, Cornell.
And who'd you beat in the championship?
Army. Actually, no, that's not true. We tied Army in the championship. We were co-champs.
How does an Army grad feel about getting beat by Princeton?
Well,
that had to be
They didn't get beat. They
that had to be a very low moment for them, I would think.
I think they're probably doing just fine.
So did you do that all 4 years?
No, I enjoyed the people I met, and but it was definitely a step down from Highland Park High School, and it just both fans who came to the games each week were probably disappointed I quit, but so I gave it up after the first year, and I got into calling Princeton Tiger games on the radio.
So
I was the voice of the Princeton Tigers in football and basketball, and even occasionally lacrosse, although I don't know I've forgotten all the rules of lacrosse.
So obviously you chose to go to Princeton. Mm-hmm. You begged to differ with the Duke admissions.
Yes, I did. I like what you did there. Yeah.
So you went to Princeton. What are you thinking you're going to do career-wise? Did know that you were in media. You have your voice is absolutely broadcast.
The face is perfect for radio, right? Yeah, there we go.
No. The face is ready for a cowboy hat and Merle Haggard.
Okay, there you go.
You're ready to go. So what are you thinking what are you studying, and what are you, is it obvious you're going to go into the family business?
No, absolutely. In fact, it's the opposite.
Yep.
It's title insurance forces younger generations to run away. It's like nothing could be more boring.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've listened to a lot of your episodes, and there's a recurring theme that you may not have realized. I think you realize there's a theme, but Gordon Gekko, it was an influence, to a lot of people.
100%
to me. It was to me.
The fictitious character of Gordon Gekko. And so
in the 80s,
yes,
that's
100%. Yeah.
Well, and so I thought I wanted to be an investment banker. And so and they recruit pretty heavily from Princeton.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yep.
And so I went into my interview with a very well-known, highbrow investment bank. And, again, back to I'm pretty sure of myself, and I'm a smart guy. And they asked me the really difficult question of, why do you want to work at our said firm?
Does said firm still exist?
It exists and is building a really large building downtown. But I didn't really know the answer. I didn't even know what they did, to be honest.
Awesome.
And it was a really good lesson. It was like, oh, I could be smart, but that's not smart to go in thinking they should hire you because you think you're smart.
Because you did not get a job offer?
I didn't get from them. And I ended up getting, the other thing, I was a little bit homesick.
Yep.
I mean, I enjoyed my time in New Jersey, but I was kind of ready to come back home.
Are you there at the same time Jason Garrett's there?
He was class of 88, I believe. And so I got there in 89.
So right after.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've met him and his wife and the local alumni stuff. But we didn't quite cross over.
No said firm. What's
Yeah.
next?
So I went into commercial banking. I got a job
Here in Dallas. Okay.
It was called Texas Commerce Bank at the time. It's now JP Morgan Chase. So, I mean, through all the iterations of how that has happened. So it was in commercial. I went through their credit training program and then did some commercial lending. And it's a great job, a great company, great job. It's a little hard for a early 20-something to be able to connect with business C-suite types and try to convince them to use your bank, when you don't, I mean, even if you know about your bank, you don't necessarily have a ton in common with those people and trying to, because that was part of the job, was to build your book of business. And one lesson I did really learn there though, and that was my job, was to, I think my goal to hit my bonus or to, get a good review or whatever it was to bring in X number of new commercial customers to the bank in said year. I'm a task-oriented guy and I want to achieve and so by golly, I went out and got, and it wasn't a ton. Let's just say it was 10 or 15 that year, but they were like 10 or 15 of the worst customers. It was not necessarily the customer.
You got the 10 or 15.
I got there, but it was just like, I'll give you my $500 checking account that I have in my business that's about to go belly up or, whatever. But I got my 10 or 15 customers or whatever. But, the lesson learned was that people are going to do what you pay them to do or what you evaluate them to do. And so later in life, it helped me to realize that when you're trying to incentivize something, be careful at what you're trying to incentivize or be real clear on what those goals are and how to measure them.
Because what we measure, we can expect.
Yeah.
And alignment of interest.
Yeah.
Hopefully your supervisors there realize, let's incentivize differently.
They probably did. And I think by that point I had decided that it just wasn't going to be the exciting career for me. And so just as a young 20-something, so I decided to go get my MBA.
Okay. So how many years you spend there doing that? 4. Yeah. You go get your MBA.
Went to Austin, UT Austin.
Yep.
You didn't go back to Duke?
They had already burned the bridge. They probably didn't want me.
I love that. They already burned the bridge.
That ship had sailed. It's like not going
Didn't
back.
even apply there to give them the chance to reject me again.
So when I say the name Christian Laettner, what visceral reaction do you have?
See, I was still kind of a Duke fan at the time, and he was such the heel. Yeah, everybody hated Christian Laettner. So I kind of enjoyed those types of characters.
Yeah. So you've had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Duke all the way through. That's awesome. So do you automatically know you're going to go to UT, or do you think through that? Okay.
Oh, no. Actually, that's not true. I applied 5 places, and UT said yes.
Okay. I love it.
There you go.
I love truth in lending.
Yeah.
Easy decision.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
And I was going to go get the finance and accounting and be smarter, and I was going to go back to be Gordon Gekko again. Mm-hmm. So I did the finance and accounting, did the summer internship up in New York with Chase Securities, actually. So I had a good recommendation from local Chase to go do that, and actually really liked the work. Yeah. Hated the life. And it was only as a summer intern.
Yeah. Were you working downtown at Chase Plaza?
Now, as a Midtown.
Are you and Sue married at this point?
We were getting married right at the end of my internship. Okay. So that summer, end of August, we got married, but she had moved to Austin once we got engaged or whatever. So, but so we were not married, but we were separated and about to get married.
Your dad owns or is working for a title company. Yes.
Yes.
Are you communicating at all with him from Texas Commerce to New York to grad school? Where does this, are you having conversations about maybe, or are you still like, hell no, I'm not going there?
I think I had already said, hell no, I'm not going there, to the point where he didn't ask anymore. He was always there to provide guidance, but I think he saw that I was trying to go a different path.
Yeah, you were going to go your own way.
An interesting aspect. He had bought his company, Hexter-Fair, from his dad. In the late 70s, and continued to grow it exponentially until 84, and he sold it to bum Bright Savings Bank.
Yep.
And then that whole debacle of the second half of the 80s and even the early 90s happened, but he didn't own it. He was an employee for some of that time and then kind of had a what's called a fee attorney office for a different company, which is still title insurance, but just kind of like a franchisee kind of thing. And so then he bought back his company in 1995, bought back the name Hexter-Fair in 95. So, and was basically, so he was busy relaunching his own company at that point in time. So, so I had no interest. I was going to be Gordon Gekko once again. And then, did it and said, this is not the life for me. And, you finish a project, it's midnight and you kind of go, oh, thank goodness. And you hand it to the one senior associate who's still there at midnight. All the bigwigs left and left all the associates and summer associates to work. And the senior associate says, that's awesome. Thanks for doing that. The next project you're going to work on is the such and such project. And I go, oh, okay, cool. Now? Like, you want me? And he goes, well, everybody else is still here. Might as well get a start on it. And I'm thinking, this isn't due for a month. Like, why am I starting on this at 12:30 in the morning, So anyway, that was sort of the realization that maybe Gordon Gekko was not the life for me. So I got into consulting.
Talk us through that. And you come back to Dallas?
Come back to Dallas. Got a job with PwC because, if you're not going to do investment banking, consulting sounded super sexy or whatever. And week 2, I got shipped off to San Antonio for a year, newlywed, with a puppy. My wife doesn't like dogs at the time and doesn't know how to deal with dogs. And I leave her with a puppy that, she has to deal with. And so I'm gone from 7 a.m. flight every Monday, returning at 9 p.m. Friday. Did that for 3 years or so. And I only did it for 3 years because if you're traveling, it's really hard at that point in time to find a job. Like Indeed.com and whatever didn't really, it wasn't a viable way to find work.
Wow. You on the same job for 3 years in San Antonio?
No, I was on that one for 1 year.
Okay.
But then, you get shipped somewhere else.
One. Yeah.
Saw lots of the U.S.
A tough way to start the first couple of years of marriage.
No,
too,
it was stressful and put a strain on things.
Yeah,
that's the kind of thing that gets you turned toward title insurance.
And maybe more importantly, back to the family business.
That old boring, kind of steady Eddie title business.
So I had these sort of negative experiences. I mean, again, in their own way, negative.
Yeah.
And at some point, then dear old dad says, look, maybe late 2003, thereabouts. He said, look, we're swamped. We've got a refi boom or something going on. We need bodies. Like, I would love for you to come help us. If you like it, you can stay and we'll figure out a role. But if you don't, you can just work here and look for a job while you're in town and, whatever. I mean, beautiful marketing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the sales pitch of, we don't really want you.
Give you a desk and you can,
you can work for us.
Try it on.
Yeah.
Test drive it.
Yeah. And that was 20 years ago. So I got sucked in that way.
Yeah. And do you and Sue, is your first child born by then?
In 2002, we found out we were expecting twins and due at Christmas. That was awesome. Except basically at the end of September, her water breaks.
Wow.
And so the math works that's 3 months early. And so very terrifying, moment and certainly brought me more into my faith as far as just, you have no control of any of that stuff. And, so they were born and stayed in the NICU. Olivia and Jackson are their names. Olivia was 1 pound, 12 ounces. Jackson was 2 pounds, 6 ounces.
Wow.
And so they were in the NICU for 3 months, basically came home for the holidays. And it was a rough time, but it was quite a blessing. And, I think about all the blessings that they are in my life now, but just also the way it sort of molded me in my faith of there's,
I'm not in control.
Yes, God has got this because I sure don't.
Are you traveling while she's carrying the twins?
No, I had taken another role that was allowing me to stay here, and so that.
So you were still at PwC at that point, but
I had actually, it was not even technically PwC, but I was in consulting still, and still turned out it wasn't what I wanted to do. But at least I was local, so I did get to go to the hospital and do all the kangaroo care or whatever, all the stuff, and hear all the machines beeping at me, and it was terrifying. But like I said, it was. It all worked out great, and what a blessing in my life it was, and what a blessing they are for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
For both of us.
Obviously, you talk about how it brought you more intimately with your faith. As you and Sue would reflect back on that season, if she was here, what would she say? What are some other maybe decisions that you all make during that season? What are lessons that you've learned from that season that have carried forward all these years?
Well, as sort of tying a bow on the job thing, right? I mean, the crystallization of how much more important family was than these supposed dream jobs that actually weren't even dream jobs really, but just the life that I was living. I didn't want to live that life. I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to work till 2 a.m. every morning, but just those things aren't what's important. I think that's, like I said, just how you deal with life. I mean, when you think of, as a Christian, how do you look at things? Well, okay, that's how I look at things now. But and I was a Christian, I guess, before that, but certainly not as strong a faith. And so, it changes the way you look at just about everything in your life, really.
Yep. As you're looking back, if you were listening here, you're a 25-year-old aggressive, assertive, achieving, entrepreneurial-minded person. What counsel would you give that listener from your experience?
Like, my dad probably knew that I was not going to like it, but he let me touch the hot stove because otherwise I probably, my internship, when I did my summer internship in New York, and people said, "Oh, I'm sorry that you hated it." And I said, "No, I think that was one of the best experiences for me to hate it, because otherwise I would have said, what if?" Or at some point in my career, I would have said, "Well, I wanted to be an investment banker anyway." And so sometimes go for it, and and if it doesn't work out,
you never know what that unlocks. And I think that's one of the misnomers, especially as maybe younger. But bad experiences are incredibly helpful. They shape us. We learn from them. And again, I've heard so many people, heard several people say, as I look back, and I love the way they phrase this, that in the 20s, think less about your compensation, but your metric ought to be, am I growing massively every day, every week, every month? Is my learning curve? So go for it, stretch yourself, because that amount of reps, the breadth of perspective is going to serve you for the rest of your life.
No, absolutely. And like I said, I would have gone the rest of my life going, "Oh, that Gordon Gekko thing, that should have been me," or
wish I'd tried that, or
Regret is a terrible thing. So, all right. So you move into Hexter-Fair at the moment. Walk us through kind of those.
Trying to be an extension of my dad. My dad was an attorney, and he was very well known in the industry and sort of the known expert in many circles or whatever. And I certainly never aspired to be that, and am not that. But I thought, okay, well, how can I help? And I can try to be an extension, and certainly having the same last name as his did not hurt in that front. So getting, helping our sales reps get out and make introductions and guide them and help, use some of the things that I had learned in business school, about marketing and, and then some other things you just learn along the way. So did that, ended up taking on more of like a CFO role and then a COO role. And so I was doing those things. And so, with my dad and one other guy, and I ended up sort of being the top 3 there. And then, so that was from 2004 all the way to January of 2012, he decides to sell the company. And he decided before that, and he was of a certain age at that point, so he was pushing 70, I think. So he was kind of looking for an exit, and it was revenues of 30 million or so, to where, it wasn't something that son number one here could have any dreams of buying much, and it wouldn't have been something that he could have said, "Oh, I'll make you a sweetheart deal, son," because I had all this complicated family tree with half brothers and stepmother and half stepsisters and whatever. I mean, and so
that's an important distinction, because again, you're not obviously disjointed families is incredibly common.
Yeah.
Obviously, did you and your dad have that direct conversation though? Like, Britt, I'd love to talk about selling this to you, or was it just was it known? Did you have a conversation? What was that period like?
I don't know that it was that direct, but I was in the room with him when he was talking to these suitors. I just knew it was not something that I could, the numbers we were talking about were not something that I could imagine, nor really would I want to take on, even if it was a seller's note or something that, I couldn't do it. But I got to be Gordon Gekko. That was actually kind of fun, because I got to help him do the sort of investment banking process.
Okay.
And actually we got close once, and then it didn't make it the finish line. And so then in January, or right around the end of 2011, he struck a deal with a big national title company. And so they closed the deal in, end of January in 2012.
Okay. So for our business owners considering, again, and we've said it all the time here in pre-transaction planning, you should always be building your business to sell.
Yeah.
Whether you do or not, you're better prepared. What did you learn through that process?
Well, I learned it's not over till it's over. The first deal that fell through, that most people don't even know was ever contemplated, and I'm not even mentioning names, but so that was number one.
Do you remember why that deal didn't close?
The buyer changed their mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was right as the GFC was starting to unfold, and there was some nervousness in the market, and probably makes sense in hindsight. So it took another 5 years or so, or 4 years to get back to where a different suitor came around that was serious. So it's not done till it's done. What's interesting? So I mentioned his age at the time. He needed to sell. Like, it just made sense from a lifestyle standpoint. Like, you're going to really carry this asset into your 70s and not know what to, and it's not something in title insurance, but like, you can't really put the thing out for bid, just because if you put your company up for bid, like, the employees are all going to leave before you ever close a deal.
Right.
So, it was all kind of a secret discussion or whatever. And I was pretty naive, I think, in this process, because I thought, okay, it was a good number. It worked well for my dad. And I thought, okay, this will be great. I'm glad for him. And the fit just ended up being really poor. Big company. We had the sort of small family feel, even though we weren't small, but it felt that way. And the employees felt it was. And I remember day one of the new administration, February 1st, everybody gets to the office and tries to log in, and their login doesn't work. And so you call this 1-800 number or whatever, and they pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, I'm Britt Fair with Fair Texas Title or Hexter-Fair Title," and they say, "I'm sorry, what is your 8-digit employee ID number? We don't know anything other than your 8-digit number." And the euphemism is, I don't want to be a number. I want, and it was like literally day one, you are
a number. You are a number.
You are an 8-figure number.
Yeah.
So it got off. It was a rocky start, and it kind of stayed rocky.
Was your dad out immediately, or did he?
So
was part of the deal for him to stay on?
He had a 2-year requirement to stay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, after about a year, he started not feeling well, having this dizziness and whatever. And it turned out to be Lewy body dementia, and he has since passed. It was like a 5-year ordeal. But so he ended up maybe technically staying 2 years, but really he had kind of checked out after year one.
Yeah. But you're there.
I was there. And so I was running the day-to-day operations. He was an attorney. He was talking to customers, taking calls.
Yep.
But yeah, so I stayed there, and I had to stay. He had to stay 2 years. I had to stay 3. We each stayed maybe 1 year longer than we had to. Although, like I said, he was sort of incapacitated, some of that.
Yep.
But I stayed 4 years almost. And then finally just couldn't take it anymore.
You're like,
and
I've had enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just said, you know what? I loved the way that my dad had created Hexter-Fair. And so I want to try to get back some of that magic. And so started Fair Texas Title and at the end of 2015.
So when you joined Hexter-Fair, how many employees?
200 to 300.
In 2012, how many employees?
It was probably still about the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you left 4 years later, still about the same employee headcount?
No.
With y'all's group?
That had not gone well.
Yeah.
And also the big national buyer, had some redundancies with, whatever, accounting and title search and these kinds of things. So we were probably down to 100 or so.
Okay.
And, I don't know that people, I'm pretty sure people weren't that happy because I left and then it pretty much imploded within 6 months.
Yeah.
So, unfortunate, but that wasn't my intention, but I had to do what I had to do, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
So
100%.
So then you wanted to recreate the magic.
Tried to,
Yeah.
Just, I missed, and again, this is sort of the secret sauce in our industry, and it's not secret, but it's just not something that people do. But like, I wanted to focus on the employees. Like that to me, first of all, there's a euphemism. The customer is always right, or customers are number one. Well, we only have customers because they like the people that we employ.
Right.
And so I really wanted to make sure that we were focused on attracting the best customers and the best employees, and then they would bring in the customers. And so that was the simple goal. Make it a title company they didn't hate working for. It was a really lofty goal.
Britt, I think you're too smart to not understand the wisdom that I think we overcomplicate things all the time. Yeah. So what are some pragmatic and or process things that come to mind when at Fair Texas it is team members first and we want them to love working for a title company?
The first thing, so again, as a dad, Olivia and Jackson and my youngest Tori we're all into sports, and Tori's still in sports at home. And so like attending their games and stuff like that was always just fun, and I think important also, but just even fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and some of those games, I mean, y'all know it's at 4:30 on a Tuesday or whatever. And so, I didn't want to miss that. And so that was a perfect example of, okay, well, I want to work at a company where we encourage people to go do that, and that everybody goes, yeah, that's important,
Yeah.
And so that, that kind of thing. And just, like I said, I sort of subscribe to the management by walking around, and knowing the people and their spouse or their kids, or, just trying to get, and it doesn't really matter their rank, I mean, it could be the lowest ranking person in the office, but I want to know them. And so that's been something that, like I said, I've tried to continue to do. And I think that's an important aspect of, rather than just calling them by an 8-digit number. So.
Yep. How many team members do y'all have?
March 16th, 2020, when we were all watching the CNBC and whatever, and the world was coming to an end, and the stock market was down 12% and whatever. Yep. And, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, just when I thought this thing was going well, I've lost the entire company and, my life savings and all this stuff. And so, funny enough, we adjusted, and like I said, people got crazy about buying real estate all of a sudden. And so it turns out 20 and 21 were the two best years in probably title insurance history, certainly in our company history. And the first half of 22 was really good as well, until the interest rates started kicking in. So at the peak, we got to about 110. It was in early 21, probably March. I was on a golf trip with some guys, and I got an email from, I wasn't sure if it was real, because it was a person whose name I knew from the financial pages, right? Saying, hey, I'd love to talk to you about partnering with your company. And I'm like, partnering with my company? What is, this guy's a real estate guy. What does that, does that mean purchasing? What does that mean? And so got on a call the next day. I'm not a golfer. I was on a golf trip. They all went golfing, and I stayed behind and was doing work. And so I got on a call with this famous guy, and you know, he basically says, yeah, we want to buy your company, and here's what we would do, and here's and obviously we still have a lot of due diligence to do, but just from what we know and we've heard, you know, you're somebody we'd want to do business with. And I'm kind of thinking like, what in the world? You know, I hadn't, that's not what I was building the company to do.
Roadmap,
But wait a minute, you know, like a year earlier, I was thinking we were closed. Mm-hmm. And so I actually called a guy who he had been sending me a bunch of comps. Just, hey, I represented a seller and got 7 times EBITDA. Hey, I represented a seller, got 6 times EBITDA. You know, I called him and I said, hey, I know what that means, right? But my question is, what EBITDA are you looking at? You know, is that trailing 12 months, last calendar year, next 12 months? What is, you know, is there some
run rate forecast?
Yeah, whatever. And
what is
he just laughed and he just goes, yeah, it's really probably any of those things. It depends on the deal. You know, we just have to summarize it on an email.
Yeah. Make sure you're talking the same language. Probably is about it.
Well, and he says, why are you asking me this? You know, and I said, well, I got this unsolicited offer, or I mean, it wasn't an offer. It was an expression of interest or whatever. Yeah. And he said, well, I don't think you should take it. You should let me represent you and run the process and put you up and get a data room and all this stuff. And I just said, no, you don't understand. In title insurance, that's the kiss of death. That doesn't work. I'm just using your information. And he goes, well, hang on. What if I brought a buyer to compete with that other buyer? Would you listen? And more importantly, would you pay me? And I said, well, okay, I'll listen. I mean, as long as it's not somebody who's going to use that against me, I'll listen, you know. And so, long story short, he brought a group to the table that I struck a deal with. And so, in July 1 of 21, they purchased Fair Texas Title. So, I'm still there. Yep. I mean, that's almost 3 years ago.
Yep.
You know, and it was an interesting time to be buying title companies. I think it was a roll-up strategy.
Yep.
And so they purchased about 30 title companies, and I'm fairly confident in saying that none of the 30 are currently operating at the level at which they were when they were purchased.
Yeah.
You know, just because
the timing.
We'll never see 21 again. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's so that's been an interesting
phenomenal
3
Brett.
years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So what do you coach us up from that? What are your takeaways from that process? What would you say to someone who owns a business?
Yeah. Well, so I learned from the first one, from my dad's transaction. And so this group, as a roll-up strategy, they really didn't have a like, hey, this is the way we're going to do things. It was, they said all the right things, right? We love you for who you are. We don't, even if we were lying, we don't have the infrastructure to tell you how to run differently or whatever. And that worked great, at least for the first year. I mean, because the market was still great. Mm-hmm. Year 2, the market started souring with rates going up, and at 30 title companies, they decided to implement a few more operational controls and you know, headcount comments and you know, those kinds of things. And so, let's see, the fall of 23 kind of came to the realization with them that you know, I didn't really want to take orders from somebody up in Michigan about, you know, what my head count needed to be or whatever. So I said, look, how about this? You run it, and I'll be, you know, advisor. You know, I'm technically the president, but I mean, sort of the chairman emeritus or whatever, you know. Right. And so that's kind of my role now is to do that. So. You asked about what would the wisdom be. I think one is understand how things might change, you know, because I thought I was smart and, you know, like super smart that, I'll be running. I didn't want to do anything but run Fair Texas Title forever and ever. But I also understand, you know, the business of, private equity or roll-ups or whatever that, they've got numbers to hit and processes that, and that wasn't really, I wasn't a process guy. I was more of a touchy-feely, let the employees, get the best employees and get out of their way. And so, when we started having to do some layoffs and whatever, it was difficult, but it made sense from times were a-changing. So
Britt,
just be flexible. Yeah.
When that guy called you,
Mr. Big?
Mr. Big, yeah, we'll call him Mr. Big. When he called you from, what month, what day to the time you transacted, how many months?
Okay,
was
so
that?
that's the crazy part. So it was probably, I'm trying to remember if it was early April that I was on this golf trip.
Yeah.
And we closed the transaction with the other buyer
Right.
July 1st. So less than 3 months from first contact by a different person.
Yeah.
So
Did you run the process with both groups though?
no, we went a little bit with Mr. Big, and then it didn't work out for whatever reasons, but this other group was real interested, and so we kind of pursued, or I kind of, it was kind of a hush hush. The interesting thing was also the group that acquired Fair Texas Title, a big insurance company called Acrisure is the name, out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. But one of the things was that was very attractive was like, you don't even have to tell anybody that we bought you.
Yeah.
And I was planning on not telling because I was going to be running it. Nothing was changing or whatever. Unfortunately, I ended up having, word got out somehow. And so I let people know vaguely that, that I brought on an equity partner. And, but anyway, it's different, but be flexible.
Well, one of the reasons I asked the question is because, I think it's instructive in the sense that, sometimes we plan for an exit. Yeah. We're like, I know the exit's coming.
I knew that was one of the pillars. I was not planning.
I know the exit's coming. I'm of age where I want to slow down, or I want to transition, or I want G2 to come in, or whatever the reason is. But then sometimes you just get approached kind of out of left field, and you're like, gosh, this is a pretty good deal. Bird in hand, maybe I need to take this. And so I think, some of maybe the storyline here is, always be prepared. Yes. We talk about that a lot, but just always, because you just don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And in 90 days, there's no time to get any real planning done.
No.
It's too quick, and you're focused on the deal. And if you're closing in 90 days, like the pacing of the deal itself is going to be such that there's no capacity to do anything else.
And then the other thing, I know you guys talk a lot about, okay, are you prepared personally to do something different, or to do less, or to,
right.
And like, I hadn't put any thought into that. I still really haven't, as far as, if I'm again, trying to figure out the chairman emeritus type role and what that looks like, for the future or whatever.
Right.
But no, that's not, I think that's another thing you guys always are coaching about is, and I told you I'm the poster child of what not to do, because I never thought about it. I just thought I'd be doing the exact same thing.
We hear it over and over again. We all get it. We're all very busy running a big business, but you just got to force yourself somehow, some way, whether it's, I think that's where YPO has served you well. You got to find the self-discipline to force yourself to work on the business, and it's just hard to do. I don't hear regret. I hear change. The market changed drastically, but as we're thinking instructive, not prescriptive, but instructive to business owners, what might you do differently in the sale this last time?
If I had been planning better, right? And I've listened to a lot of your guests in the past and other areas, I know I had a lot of employees. I still have a lot of employees I care a lot about. And I wish I had done better about, whether it's the ESOP thing that some of your guests have talked about, right. Or, I created this thing that I am proud of, and it attracted a bunch of people, and I certainly have not intended to change any of that or pull the rug out, but I don't know. I feel like I know for a fact that there are a few people who are mad at me for doing those kinds of things because they feel like the rug got pulled out from under them, which, certainly was not my intention. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those, hey, post COVID, I had this recollection of, oh my gosh, I almost lost everything. And so then when these opportunities arise, I had to go for it. But that's maybe a regret, if there is a regret.
And again, regrets are lessons though, right?
Yeah.
And we appreciate your vulnerability. You're a young person. You're going to continue to grow business, whether it's this one or another one or whatever, or you're going to mentor. What I hear you saying there, you would have been more thoughtful. This is why you got to be ahead of the game of how either senior leadership or the entire company could have participated at some level in that recapitalization event.
And I don't even mean just financially as much as just like in decisions and roles. And, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how I wish it had gone other than, like I said, nobody wants people mad at them for decisions that they make. And I'm a big boy.
There's a couple things in here. I think one is there's a lot of optionality around how you exit and, like majority, minority, control, non-control, ESOP, lots of different options based on how you want the company to go forward. And obviously, like in the case of your dad, initially size impacts that, right? There's certain limitations to certain structures. But then the other thing is, okay, well, what about the go forward team and how I think about the team and the culture, and can the culture preserve going forward? And if it's a minority investor and it's non-control, you're going to maintain a lot more of the culture. If it's a majority investor and it's a control investment and they're putting in their processes and their systems, and
they're a good company. I mean, it's like one of the things, I sit here and say, oh, there's change, but we got much better benefits. We got a deep pocketed, during the turmoil times or whatever of today.
Yeah.
We've got a deep pocketed investor behind us that, so that,
there's
I lament some of the things that, maybe I would have done differently, but there are some really cool things that, technologies are better, those kinds of things. So yeah absolutely. You change is change. It's not all good and it's not all bad, but change is change.
And it's all growth. Learn. Yeah. As you might have a final word to business owners leading their business, Britt, what might you encourage them, challenge them?
Back on this employee thing, but I think your employee, and again, every business is different, and some people just have a widget machine that kicks it, so maybe their employees aren't as important because they've just got a widget machine. But
somebody's got to run the widget machine.
Somebody's got to run the widget machine.
But I'm telling you, the team that you put together, that definitely is the secret to the success that Fair Texas Title has had. And I look back to my dad's and at Hexter-Fair, the exact same thing. It's the people, and treat them right and make them, because your biggest asset goes out the door every day at 5:30, and you hope they come back the next day. And I certainly have never been, and not the perfect boss, or I don't mean to imply that, other than that's kind of a realization, and over and over again I get reminded, just without that, I certainly am nothing, and really I'd say that about all companies.
Right.
It's only, you're only as good as the people you have, and figure out how to keep them, whether it's through benefits but more importantly, just how you treat them.
Phenomenally well said. I love that, how you treat them. The golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated. So, Britt, very grateful for you. Thanks for investing in Decision Points and our audience.
Thank you for having me.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Britt.
Thank you. Have a great day.